And welcome back, Bears fans, to another edition of the Bears Brothers Podcast. It's time for another game preview episode as the Bears are set to take on the Minnesota Vikings on Halloween night, which is going to be their second straight primetime game against a divisional foe. The Vikings have beat the Bears the last three meetings and are 4-2 against the Bears at Soldier Field on Monday Night Football. Not looking good. It's Halloween. We're kind of scared. Maybe the Bears are going to be scared hitless. We'll find out. But I'm your host, Will DeWitt. And I am joined tonight by my two fellow Bears brothers, Brandon Hazlett and Nicholas Moriano. Gentlemen, how are you doing tonight?
I've been better, but I am ready to talk Bears football.
Doing pretty well, Will. I can't complain. Easy work schedule for school-wise, but I'm ready to talk some Bears football just like Brandon.
Awesome. Glad to hear it, guys. And I just wanted to thank both of you guys for stepping up last Thursday, doing the post-game show without me as my mother-in-law passed away. Nick, I listened to your message in the beginning of the show, and that's just so spot on how I feel about both of you guys. We really are a family, and I care about you guys, a lot too. And also, for all the Bears fans who passed along their condolences, either on Twitter or Facebook, I just want to say thank you. The support was tremendous and very unexpected, and it really touched my heart. It really did. And I felt the love from the entire Bears nation. And I just want to thank you to everyone who was involved in that. Really do appreciate it. And your kind words really meant a lot in that time. All right, guys. So let's start the show. And before we actually get into breaking down this upcoming matchup, Nick, we were talking a little bit in our chat earlier today. You wanted to touch on two topics: the Alshon trade rumors and Jay Cutler coming back for injury. So let's start with the Alshon trade rumors. Go ahead. Lead us into that section.
Yeah, actually, I just watched a video from Ian Rappaport, and he basically went on NFL Network saying that these trade rumors are just rumors. The Bears and Eagles have not discussed anything about trades, and if they were to trade, the Bears would get a compensatory pick. And it's funny because we were actually trying to pronounce that word earlier, but they would get that pick regardless if he were to be traded now or if he just left at the end of the season. So it doesn't make much sense for the Bears to trade Alshon Jeffrey. And if the Eagles were in, potentially trying to get Jeffrey, it would be a trial and error period where Jeffrey would have like an 8 games to kind of show his worth. And then he would just be a free agent at the end of the season once again. So on the rumors that are trade rumors, which Alshon Jeffrey, they're just rumors. And actually before last night, I was kind of thinking, man, we might not have Alshon Jeffrey going into Monday night. So I'm like, thank goodness that this all came out and kind of clarified, everything that was going on.
Yeah, again, yes, it is just a rumor. And I was actually thinking, though, if it was true, I would almost be okay with it, only if they knew he was not coming back after this season. That way you can get something out of him. Because obviously, if you just let him walk, you're going to get nothing in return. So if you did find someone, a nice trade partner who might offer a mid-round pick, at least, something in return, that would have been okay. But again, it's all just rumors. It's all just speculation. So really nothing more to get into here. B, do you have any thoughts on this, on the rumors?
I am happy they are just rumors. I don't know why Philly would need him after the win against Minnesota. It looked like they didn't really need him. So glad he's staying here for the year. Maybe a different discussion at the end of the season. So stay tuned.
All right. And then also Jay Cutler coming back from injury. Nick, there's a couple things he said in a press conference that really took you by surprise.
Not by surprise. It's just as a veteran, he's an 11-year veteran, and how he handled the press conference, I thought he handled it really well, saying all the right things. But the main big quote that he had that kind of resonated with me was just he said, Brian Hoyer did a good job, but he wanted to be out there. And with Fox not really having his back, last season and, the beginning of this season, he could have easily just been sour about the whole situation, maybe not be willing to be that, their quarterback, because we don't know. Jay Cutler doesn't even know his future in Chicago, but I'm glad the way that he handled it. He handled it like a professional, like he is. And I honestly believe that he wants to help this organization win. And, it's unfortunate that he is playing the number 1 defense in the league, but, I thought that his press conference, he impressed me just with what he said.
Yeah, I mean, he's been his demeanor has been improved the past couple of seasons, especially when what he's saying to the media for sure. And like you said, come Monday night, he has to go up against the number 1 defense. It's quite a daunting task after sitting out, coming in cold, but we'll see if he's up to the challenge. B, do you have anything to add on that before we move on to the game preview?
It's easy to say all the right things, but once again, stay tuned till the end of the season, and we'll break it down more. But as of right now, he can say all the right things, but I'm just curious to know if he actually means it, what the relationship actually is between John Fox and Jay Cutler.
That's probably the biggest question that nobody's ever going to know besides them two, and perhaps maybe a couple other people in the franchise. But yeah, it's honestly, it's all speculation, and we shouldn't really waste our time on guessing what that relationship is. All right, guys, so let's get the show on the road. Who are the Minnesota Vikings? And let's start like we always do with our game previews, and that's going to be with my quick snapshot. They're 5-1 on the year, first in the NFC North, and they're coming off a 30-16 loss against the Eagles, like we said, and an offense that are 31st in yards with only 299 yards per game and 18th in points with 21.5 points scored per game. And those numbers aren't what you say scary, but with that daunting defense that we're going to go ahead and discuss later on, it's a pretty deadly combo. And really, to me, it looks the part of kind of what we're used to under Lovie Smith, that average middle of the road offense and a top 5 defense. And this is like, the number 1 defense in the entire league right now. So definitely a really interesting deadly combo here brewing up in Minnesota. And let's go ahead and start with that man under center, Sam Bradford. Last week, he completed 24 41 passes with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. He also lost 2 fumbles deep in the Eagles territory. All of those turnovers were his first ever as a Viking. So Brandon, let's start with you, of course. And what's your take on Bradford, and why did he struggle so much last week?
Just kind of like the Bears, the offensive line for Minnesota was kind of shaken up. They didn't have the regular core guys in there. So his accuracy was a little off, which, I mean, it's Sam Bradford. With good protection, he showed that he can make the pass, but it seemed like in Philly, occasionally, he had the same issue with accuracy occasionally. But he was smart and was able to throw the ball away a couple times, avoiding a sack. And he struggled to pass in the run, meaning if he had a bootleg. My notes look a little weird, so I couldn't pronounce that right. But in the bootlegs, he struggled with accuracy. I'm more surprised of their inability to convert on the turnovers that their defense created. I had 3 chances early in the game to try and put points on the board, and they failed with the running into the kicker penalty. And then they had the interception that was forced by the defense, setting up the offense on the 3-yard line right away. And then they got backed up, didn't get any points out of it. And then there was a fumble recovery setting up the offense in the red zone right away, too, and they didn't convert on any of those. So I don't know if that's Sam Bradford's fault or if that's the offensive line's fault. But those are opportunities that a team has to convert in order to be great, I guess, because they are good, but I'm curious to know now how they rebound, and that will make them a great team.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, really, for me, what I saw was really, like you said, that offensive line was zero help for him. And like you said, when Bradford gets protection, he can get the job done. But without it, he kind of falls apart a little bit. So hopefully the Bears can kind of, get to him, create some pressure, and hopefully they can force Bradford into even more, turnovers. And, looking at the passing game here, one of Bradford's most productive targets this season has been Stephon Diggs, but he has not scored or top 50 yards since week 2. Brandon, you want to go ahead and run down the rest of the receivers for us?
Yeah, I'm just going to run down Diggs' stats for the year. He's got 27 receptions for 390 yards. He's on pace to do what he did last year. That's 14.4 yards per reception. The longest reception he's had for the year is 46 yards. He does have 1 touchdown. And against the Bears last year in the first matchup, I don't know how many of you guys remember this, but he had 6 receptions for 95 yards and a touchdown, and it felt like the Bears just could not stop him.
I recall that, yeah.
So hopefully the Bears get him figured out in round 2 here. He is a solid receiver, but he struggled to get separation early from the Eagles' corners, and when there's so much pressure coming at Bradford, it makes it very hard to get the ball to Stephon Diggs. And then you have Adam Thielen, who has 22 receptions and 324 yards for the year. He has 2 receptions for 52 yards against the Eagles. He had a touchdown and a fumble on the year, and his longest reception is 36 yards. He had a very good over-the-shoulder catch for 27 yards, plays perfectly by Bradford. But he was looked to the end zone when Bradford threw one of his interceptions. So that tells me that they looked to him in red zone situations first, maybe over Stephon Diggs. Kind of surprised me that they went to him there, but he did. And then we have, lastly, Cordero Patterson. He had 18 receptions for 158 yards on the season with 2 touchdowns. His best game of the year was against the Eagles when he had 7 receptions for 67 yards and a touchdown. They use him more in slants, bubble screens, short route kind of things, and he was used as a kick returner last year. He hasn't done so much of that this year. He had a nice post route to get open in the middle of the end zone towards the end of the game when the Vikings scored their only touchdown. So definitely have their hands full with those 3 receivers. And then you're looking at Kyle Rudolph, who's Teddy Bridgewater if he was playing, or Sam Bradford because he will be playing. That's his security blanket. He's going to be the go-to guy, the last check down guy when they need to get rid of the ball. So you just have to keep that in mind whether it's Darrell Freeman or Danny Trevathan playing coverage on him.
No, exactly. And Rudolph, he averages about 8 targets per week. And, fun fact for the Bears and opposing tight ends, the Bears have held all opposing tight ends this season to 50 yards or less, which is a pretty interesting stat if you actually think about it. But like you said, B, he's been Bradford's go-to guy, especially on third down conversions. And he's really, over the past couple of weeks, has started to become that number one option in the Vikings passing game. So, Nick, the Bears come into this game. They allow about 243 yards per game through the air. And last week, they allowed they allowed, I believe 3 different Packers to catch at least 10 balls. And, I don't see that happening again this week. But how do you think the Bears match up against these wideouts?
Yeah, well, and I don't think that's going to happen this week. Bradford and that offense is not Aaron Rodgers and the Packers offense. But how they're going to match up, it depends who's going to be playing cornerback and in the secondary for the Bears. On Twitter, I asked Brad Briggs, a Chicago Tribune writer, how Tracy Porter and Bryce Callahan were doing. And he said that neither practiced yesterday, Tuesday, and that Callahan was ways before he can go and suit up on Monday night. So that's a concern because if we're looking at it, they just put up Demontre Hurst on the roster, and what it might end up being, if those two guys can't go, you have Cre'Von LeBlanc, who could play one cornerback, and then either Sherrick McManus or Devontae Bosby. And we saw how Bosby played against the Packers, and that would be a pretty scary. Halloween, it's kind of suited for everything being a little bit scary at this time of the year, but and then you'd have Demontre Hurst, who would play the nickel. The Bears did just sign Jacoby Glenn back to the practice squad, actually a couple minutes ago. But honestly, guys, depending on who's able to go out there for the Bears, this is not a dominant Vikings offense. These receivers, I don't think, are as good. Like you said, they're scoring. They're doing what the Bears did with Lovie Smith, so it's not very, very scary. But their defense is going to keep them in games and put that offense out there for a bunch of times, to potentially score. So, depending on who plays, guys, I don't know if the Bears are going to have the depth to be able to contain these Vikings offense, really.
Yeah, and going back to Rudolph, like I said, he's becoming that number one option in their passing game. So I was curious on how do you think the Bears should limit him? Because obviously I would like to see Freeman on him more times than not. And I really think any corner that the Bears can even put on him would be a total mismatch in favor of the Vikings. And the only corner on the roster that I would even be kind of okay with covering Rudolph would be Callahan. But like you said, he's light years away from even starting on Monday. So how do you think the Bears should limit Kyle Rudolph come Monday night?
I think it has to be Darrell Freeman. He showed all year that he is our best cover linebacker. And you already went through the stats with what they've done to opposing tight ends. You look at last week against Richard Rodgers. He had 1 reception for 7 yards. Jaguars, Julius Thomas, 2 receptions for 28 yards. The only 50-yard game was against Dwayne Allen for the Colts. But the Bears do a good job at containing the opposing team's tight ends. And I think the best guy that they have out there is Darrell Freeman, who showed all season that he is clearly the Bears' best defender and the Bears' best cover linebacker. So I would expect to see a lot of Darrell Freeman on, but then again, maybe they put Floyd on there. Maybe he gets his chance to remember back in that Dallas game where he had him on Jason Witten. Maybe as what in your post, Will, you wanted to see these young guys develop. Maybe this could be a good opportunity for that because we're gonna need Floyd to do these things later as the season progresses, but it's going to be Freeman. So but maybe we see a little bit of Floyd on him because I think he has the height to do it.
Just to add to Nick's point, Freeman should have no worries when it comes to other tight ends because the other tight end on the Vikings roster is Rhett Ellison. He has 2 receptions for 20 yards on the year. He's primarily a blocking tight end, and he jumped off sides on one of those early trips in the red zone. So I don't know that he's necessarily a reliable target anyway. So really, you only have to worry about one guy on the tight end depth chart as far as Bears coverage.
All right. Well, speaking of blocking, let's talk about, that offensive line, who is definitely the weakest link of that entire Minnesota Vikings team. And last week, that line gave up 12 hits and 6 sacks. And like I said, gave Bradford little time to attack downfield. And that offensive line just seems to wilt under pressure. So, B, what other insight do you have for that unit?
Both tackles were out against Philadelphia, and that's why they really struggled because when you have Brandon Graham coming off, I believe it was going to be Jake Long at the time, coming in, making a couple hits on him. There's pressure from the outside is so hard to get around. You can step up in the pocket, and then you've got, the other 2 guys there for the Vikings in a 4-3 defense, which is going to be Tom Johnson and Linville Joseph, who are no guys to mess around with either. Wow, I really screwed that up.
I was wondering where you're getting at
offensive
there.
line.
I was wondering where you're getting at there. I was about to cut you off.
All right, back to the offensive line. They were without Andre Smith and TJ Clemmings, the two tackles. They had Brandon Graham coming off the right side where Andre Smith is at. So what they did is they played some Jake Long at either tackle position, and he struggled when he was subbed into the game. He's a veteran. He only had like a day to learn the playbook, but he wanted to get in there and play, and I think he hurt the team more than he helped the team. And they struggled altogether with significant pressure. Anytime the Eagles showed blitz, they were just able to get to Bradford. So I don't know what their injury report is, whether or not TJ Clemmings is going to come back or Andre Smith. But those are two guys that the Vikings need to have back if they want to keep Bradford protected and keep him from the injury history that he's got.
Yeah, so definitely two guys that the Bears hope stay off the field come Monday night. But, hearing that the two tackles are possibly out, all I keep thinking about is that the Bears can definitely go eating in this game, guys. I'm hoping to see Leonard Floyd build off last game, which was his best game as a pro with those 2 sacks and that awesome forced fumble and recovery for a touchdown. That was, 100% effort. And even more than that, I think Pernell McPhee perhaps can, ease into a little bit more of a role. I'm sure, he's just going to, each game, his role is going to expand just slightly. So I'm hoping he can be out there more, especially with going up against 2 backup tackles. The Bears can definitely create some pressure off the edge. Nick, am I wrong when I'm saying that? Or do you see the Bears possibly being able to get to the quarterback in this game?
Oh, no, the Bears front 7 should have a really disruptive game. They're going to steal the Vikings candy, you guys. See more puns on Halloween. But I think that with Floyd coming off his best game in his NFL career, and then Willie Young, hopefully he has back of a resurgence. And I think this is a perfect game for both of these guys to get after the quarterback. And Pernell McPhee has another week where he gets to practice, get a little bit healthier. I think this is the game where they can really exploit the injuries that the Vikings have been dealing with all season. And we saw that after watching film, the Eagles, they brought a bunch of blitzes. Maybe this is a game where Vic Fangio, he doesn't usually like to blitz, but where the Eagles were very effective against the Vikings was bringing that corner, that safety blitz late. And they were able to get to Bradford a bunch. And just watching each snap go on, Bradford did not have much time. Again, that is a really good Eagles defense, but I think that Vic Fangio has to do, repeat some of the things that this Eagles defense did because it was really effective. It showed that Bradford was able to lose the ball, had a bunch of fumbles, some interceptions, but this could potentially be a big day for the Bears front 7 to get some pressure and hopefully create some turnovers.
No, for sure. And, it's kind of funny to think about it. Last week, we gave some advice on how the Bears should attack the Packers, lessons that we learned from the Cowboys. This week, we're kind of doing the same thing with another divisional opponent, but another NFC East team, the Eagles, and we're trying to learn from them. So it's kind of funny how these 2 weeks seem to mirror each other. But, B, let's head into a discussion on the Vikings running game. Can you give us a breakdown there?
Yeah, Jerick McKinnon will more than likely get the start. He played a lot better than Matt Asiata did. Asiata was largely ineffective. I'll give you a stat real quick. He's got 158 rushing yards on 48 attempts. He's got 2 touchdowns, and he's got 13 receptions for 98 yards and no receiving touchdowns. But then you look at Jerick McKinnon, who's a very patient runner. He showed it against Philadelphia. He's a very hard runner when the pile's all up in the middle, and everyone knows that that's where the run's going. He hits that hard, even if there's no lane. So he'll drag a couple guys with him. And we also seen him in the Wildcat against Philadelphia, and he can throw the ball. So that's got to be something to watch out for if the Eagles are going to do, or if the Vikings are going to do that. He's played in every game so far, 217 rushing yards on 68 attempts. He's got a rushing touchdown, and he's got 8 receptions for 29 yards. So Jerick McKinnon showed more promise than Matt Asiata. Sorry. And
whoa! This is a family show.
I know it. I corrected myself. I didn't want to go that way. But no, I imagine Jerick McKinnon will get the start over Asiata.
Well, the only thing would be McKinnon, he did suffer that ankle injury in the second quarter last week. And I know he kind of labored through it, but sometimes players can, finish out a game.
It's a long week. He's got an extra day to rest up, I imagine. He'll be out there more than Asiata.
Well, that's fair. All right. I can go with that. But I'm just saying there's
right. I agree with you.
We need to just at least mention that. But, Nick, how do you see the Bears handling that Vikings rushing attack?
It's gonna be tough, but they have to take advantage of the matchups. So I mean, even with especially with those 2 tackles who have just played awful for the Vikings, I think the Bears need to just take advantage of it. I mean, they have the pass rusher. They gain another pass rusher, Pernell McPhee, like I said, but It's potentially, this is going to be a game where whichever offensive line plays better is eventually going to end up.
I think we lost Nick there for a second. At least he
Did we? I mean, I'm back. I'm listening. Can you guys hear me or no?
Yeah, I hear you. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, no, but potentially, I don't know where I cut off at, but I might be repeating myself where I was saying whichever offensive line plays better is potentially going to be the winner. But yeah.
All right. Sounds good to me. So looking at the Vikings on third down, guys, they're 11th in third down conversions, converting 41.6% of the time. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% positive, I'm pretty sure outside of that Jaguars game, the 11th is the lowest that we've played a team being ranked. So seriously, like the Bears play a top 10 team on third down every week, besides like these past two, which is almost uncanny. But Brandon, do you have any observations on how the Vikings fare in their red zone offense?
In the red zone offense, they're going to look to Stephon Diggs because he's a big physical guy. Like I said, Adam Thielen. But more importantly, Kyle Rudolph, a guy we already talked about. He's a security blanket. That's where all tight ends usually make their living, and Kyle Rudolph is no exception. So look for Rudolph in the red zone, as well as depending where they're at, they very well could run a very good McKinnon up the middle as well.
Good stuff there. And, you know, before I ask you, Brandon, if you have any other final observations on this offense, I just want to note that we're talking about the Eagles defense and just how much they tore apart, you know, the Vikings and Sam Bradford. And I recalled that the Eagles were the last time we saw Jay Cutler. So I just wanted to pull up his stats real quick in that game before he left. And Cutler was 12 of 17 for 157 yards. He had the pick. But, of course, that thumb towards the end just kind of gave out. But just going to prove that Jay Cutler wasn't doing too bad against one of those better defenses in the NFL. So let's see how that translates here coming on Monday night. But now, Brandon, do you have any other final observations before we switch over?
We have touched on all the important points, I believe. I do apologize for talking about the Vikings defense a little early.
Yeah, I know. Just giving away our show
I was just like, yeah, let's do it. But
all right, Nick, how about you? Any other last thoughts on that Bears defense, man?
They just got to come out and play two halves, because we've seen when we went for the Jaguars game, they kind of gave up in the second half. Obviously, their offense didn't help them out, the Bears offense, because the defense had to be out there so long. And then against the Packers, again, they came out, had a very strong first half. Second half kind of gave up because the offense, again, had the defense be out there for such a long time. But if this defense can somehow just play in a complete game, I think that the Bears will be in it for, a potentially, maybe it's a low scoring game, fourth quarter field goal wins it. But yeah, hopefully the defense can just hang in there for an entire game.
Wow. Connor Barth kicking a game winning field goal. That would be the best treat on Trick or Treat on Halloween. But all right, guys, so let's discuss this Vikings defense, which is obviously the strength and heart of this Vikings team, because they come in ranked best in the league in terms of yards allowed per game with 279.5 yards allowed, which is the only team allowing opponents under 300 yards per game. And they give up the least amount of points per game as well, with only 14, which is only like one less than the Bears average per game. So that's pretty spooky as well. And, they may not be the 85 Bears. Heck, nobody ever will be. But this defense is playing pretty lights out. So, Brandon, let's start with that Vikings front seven, a unit that just creates panic and turnovers left and right. And by the way, the Vikings lead the NFL with a plus 11 turnover ratio. Go ahead.
The front seven is very, very tough. They gave up an easy 2-point conversion on the Wentz kind of run up the middle after running into the kicker penalty that the Vikings had. So Wentz it was a designed quarterback run. He was able to push it in there. So that kind of disappointed me. And they let a bad fourth down play where Wentz fumbled the ball essentially, but he was able to grab it and still run and get a first down. Like, I wasn't around in 85, but I imagine the Bears defense wouldn't let that happen. So I'm going to take a knock on that one. But they're very tough. Brian Robinson, he's a very good open field tackler. Once he gets his hands on you, he's not going to let you go. But he only has 10 tackles, but he has 4 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. We're looking at Tom Johnson, who has 8 tackles, 2 sacks, and an interception on the defensive line. He did jump off sides when the Eagles were on their 1-yard line, so discipline for the Vikings defense is going to have to come back. in this game against the Bears if they want to.
Yeah, that doesn't have to. They can wait a
It doesn't
week.
have to, I agree, but just for the Vikings perspective, that's got to
Yeah.
be something I imagine that they're going to fix. And then you're looking at Lavelle Joseph, who has 26 tackles, a forced fumble, and 3 sacks on the year, and Everson Griffin on the other defensive end, who has 13 total tackles, a forced fumble, and 4 sacks. So that front four is very, very tough to beat. And I'm curious to know how Tom Johnson and Joseph are going to maybe expose 2 guards that we don't have. You know, if Eric Kirsch is going to play and Ted Larson, you know, how are they going to fare against them?
No, that's a very valid point, and I think we should swing that over to Nick because that's his forte over there, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, because guys, it is Halloween, so it's okay to be scared against this Vikings front seven, especially with the injuries that the Bears offensive line has. Of course, Jay Cutler comes back when the offensive line is in shambles. Once again, of course, it has to happen. It's like a storybook, ending there. But with obviously Justin, he was in a boot during the Packers game, and Long, he said he effed up his arm, and that was quoted in the paper. But
this is a family show.
Yeah, it's a family show. That's right. But Jay Cutler did say, and of course he has to say this, he's a quarterback that with Ted Larson and Eric Kush playing, that they're not going to skip a beat. I think against this Minnesota front seven, they're going to skip a beat and then a lot of beats, because this is it's just the worst, possibility that can happen with a battered up Bears offensive line. Jay Cutler coming back, playing against this defense. I don't think that they're going to be able to give Cutler much time, and the only way they do that is maybe if they extend the pocket and have Cutler roll out just to give him more time, because they're gonna have to game plan, and Dow Longs is gonna be in for a long day, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly. They have to extend the pocket, move the pocket around, not always keep it in the same spot, not having that front seven, have their ears pinned back and just gunning towards, Cutler each and every play.
Put more than 11 linemen out on the field. I mean, put more than 11 players on the offensive block. That would also help.
Yeah, we're going to need all the help we can get here, especially because, Brandon, you brought up Brian Robinson and how he has 4 sacks on a year, which I believe is tied for the team high.
I believe so.
All right. Did you know as well, in his career against the Bears, he has 5.5 sacks. So he just has, a knack of getting to to Jay Cutler. So that's something else to keep an eye on. And speaking of things to keep an eye on, it's a perfect time to put up my matchup to watch up front. And seriously, I'm just going to rename this. It's not even my matchup to watch. It's who's Bobby Massey going up against this week and who do we need to fear? Well, that person's probably going to be Daniel Hunter, because whoever's going up against Massey, we have to hold our breath each and every time that they go after the quarterback. But speaking of Cutler as well, I just wanted to point out that he does have a 6-1 record and a 98.3 passer rating at Soldier Field against the Vikings. But Nick, do you think we should expect those type of numbers to come Monday night or no?
There's no way those numbers are going to happen Monday night. I would love for them to happen, but there's just no way, just with the offensive line. But I mean, there's just no way. But let's go back to last season, though, when they did play him in Soldier Field. Jay Cutler did have a pretty good game against them. He went 20 for 23. He had 211 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. And the Bears, I don't know if you guys remember this. Remember when Jeremy Langford dropped that key 3rd down conversion?
Oh, yeah.
And that was huge. It hit him right in the chest. So the Bears were in that game. They also gave up a punt return. Obviously, this is a better defense than last year, but I just don't see there's no way that Jay Cutler can put up these numbers with the offensive line that's in front of him. No way it can happen, Will. Do you guys think that it can happen? I just personally don't.
No. I just wanted to make sure that I was backed up with that claim. But
yeah.
All right, so let's talk about this, let's talk about this front seven a little bit more, but now let's talk more specifically of the Bears rushing attack, because last week the Eagles actually were able to run the ball kind of well. They had over 100 yards on the ground with 101. Brandon, why were the Eagles able to run the ball so well?
I would personally, I know this doesn't answer your question, but I would personally run it Chad Greenway. 3 years ago, he had 134 tackles, but this year he's only got 9 so far, and his tackle numbers have been dropping steadily every year. I mean, he's disciplined, he seals his edge, but if he's not going to put up stats, I think that tells me there's kind of a weak spot there, even though Chad Greenway is a really good player, and I don't want to take anything away from him. But that is where I would exploit this Vikings defense, is on his side of the linebacking core, because then you have Eric Kendricks in the middle, who has 45 total tackles, a forced fumble, and an interception. And he was mostly getting in there on the Eagles' run attempts, so I would imagine that he's going to continue to do the same. against the Bears. And then you have Anthony Barr on the other side of Chad Greenway, who has 21 total tackles and a sack, who recovered Wentz's fumble on the bad handoff to Ryan Matthews. So we know that he's quick. He'll get in the backfield, create some havoc. But if I'm the Chicago Bears, I am looking Chad Greenway's way just to see if you can make him stop you.
Sure. And going back to the Bears rushing attack here, Nick, I mean, Jeremy Langford's practicing. That's good news. I mean, we've kind of hit on this topic before, and my kind of theory is I don't care which of these running backs technically start because you're going to need to, mix them up either way. But I would like to see them just use perhaps even all three of these running backs right now because Carey's been running well these past couple of weeks. So they all do different stuff well. What would be the best way that the Bears utilize all three backs in the backfield Monday night?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see, definitely. But I think that they should use a lot of Kadeem Carey, and I know Brandon likes to hear that because with Jordan Howard, he's a very patient runner, and he's waiting for the blocks or the lanes to be opened up. And with this offensive line having the injuries that it has, I don't think that's going to happen this week. So I think you need that guy who's going to hit the hole quick. And we've seen that Carey can be pretty effective, and there's just a night and day difference between how they run the ball. So I think that Carey is going to see a lot of opportunities this game just because he hits that hole hard and fast. But I mean, obviously, I think when it comes to like goal line situations, if the Bears can get to the goal line, let's get there first. But I think Howard would be the guy that would carry the ball there. But I think Carey's going to not have a big day, but have a lot of opportunities to make a lot of plays.
Yeah, especially, if Langford does come back, he's kind of this, a little bit the same mold as Carey. Not exactly, but they kind of, comparing to Howard, at least, they're more similar. But yeah, I agree. I think I had it in my notes as well that with that Bears, offensive line that seems to be losing a different piece each and every week, it's kind of hard to create some of those holes, those longer developing run plays for Jordan Howard. And that's why we've seen him struggle. Whereas Carey, who can just hit a hole hard and, find those little creases and just pop right through real quick, that's going to be better against a team that has such a front seven that can get, so much backfield penetration in a hurry like the Vikings. All right, so let's talk about this Vikings secondary now, guys, who has 3 players with multiple interceptions on the year. Brandon, let's give us a rundown.
I'd like to start with Terrence Newman, the 14-year veteran who's very disciplined. Nelson Aguilar tried to give him a double move to get to the end zone, which Wentz tried to throw it to, but Terrence Newman stayed very disciplined, stayed on his guy, and was able to let the pass not be completed. So I would say he's going to be one of the most disciplined, and he's going to swap time with Trey Waynes, who is kind of the opposite, who's not the most disciplined. He had a short yard pass interference against the Eagles, and he's kind of had a history of this. So if you're the Bears receivers, I really hope that you're matched up on Trey Waynes and Jay Cutler finds you because I think that he's one of the vulnerable spots. But last week, Xavier Rhodes, he kind of disappointed me. He is the one with 2 interceptions on the team. He does have a forced fumble. He has 8 total tackles. He made a great athletic play to get an interception on Carson Wentz laid out. They were all in the Vikings were in quadruple coverage because they were very, very smart. They know each other's assignments. They know where each other's at on the field. And it's really kind of great to watch if you're a defensive fan like me because his interception, there was the safety deep. So Xavier Rhodes cut in front of the receiver, and that's just an easy interception for any defense as long as you have guys that are able to make the play. He was very active in the first quarter, though. I think Wentz was kind of picking on him just to kind of get in his head a little bit. He did get beat by Nelson Aguilar a couple times. He did look vulnerable, and they ended up putting Captain Munnerlyn in his place to end the game. So something to watch for there. And then you have the 2 safeties, Harrison Smith, who had very good run support throughout the game. And then Andrew Sadejo, who also has 2 interceptions, had a very good interception against Carson Wentz. It was kind of thrown right to him, hit him in the stomach, so he had to catch it. But those are all very solid and very smart, fundamentally sound, disciplined secondary that the Vikings have. And I would definitely say that's one of their strong points.
Oh, no, for sure. It really is. Like that entire defense, like from, the very, from D-line all the way back to the safety. I mean, they are complete. This is a very complete defense that the Bears are going to be going up against. And like you said as well, they have 2 safeties who are, very formidable. They can, hang back, and the corners knowing that those 2 safeties are back there and that if they mess up, if they miss a tackle, that those safeties are going to be there to, wrap up the receiver in a hurry, allows those corners to play a little bit more aggressive. And when corners play aggressive against Jay Cutler, it tends to not go well. And that's something that I believe we need to watch out for because they're going to definitely jump on some of these routes. And with Cutler not playing for a few weeks, the timing is not going to be perfect. And it's just seeming like it's going to be a recipe. I don't want to say for disaster because I don't think it's going to be a disaster, but there's definitely a recipe.
Scary loss.
Yeah,
I want to get on the Halloween puns.
Yeah, we had to think of something else besides scary though, but spooky, creepy. But moving on, let's talk about that Bears passing attack. We kind of hit on what the Bears should do via the offensive line, creating the pocket for Cutler, etc. But we need to talk about these Bears receivers. And I mean, starting with Alshon, I mean, he had 11 targets a week ago, but only 3 catches. But hopefully, again, with Cutler back, he can kind of build some of that rhythm that we're used to seeing between he and Cutler. But then on the flip side, Cameron Meredith, who had great chemistry with Brian Hoyer, we need to see what he's going to do with Cutler. And last year, they showed that they have some chemistry in spurts, but nothing to the fact that we've seen this season with Hoyer and Meredith. And then, of course, Eddie Royal is still uncertain if he's going to give it a go because of that toe. And then Zach Miller, he hasn't scored in 3 games, and the Vikings defense is kind of similar to the Bears in terms of holding, opposing tight ends to very small numbers. If they haven't they have not had a tight end exceed 65 yards all season long. But Nick, what do you think the Bears have to do here in order to get these guys open, create, some mismatches out there to just move the damn football?
Yeah, seriously. Cutler's back. You have to take some deep shots with the short amount of time that he's going to have to throw, because you have Alshon Jeffrey, who's been, really ineffective with Hoyer. And a big matchup that I'm going to watch for is if Jeffrey gets lined up on Trey Waynes. Watching Trey Waynes, I remember watching him on a Sunday night game against the Packers. He got torched that game. So many pass interference calls. He ends up making the game-winning interception. But I think this is a matchup where Alshon Jeffrey could potentially exploit it and show a weakness on this Vikings defense. But with Cutler being back, you have to take some shots. Like we said, with the offensive line being injured, you have to extend the pocket, have him roll out. But you have to. I want to see, like you said, you brought it up, Will, the connection between Meredith and Cutler. They did show it last year, but I want to see if it continues this year. And then Zach Miller, I don't know if they're going to be able to get him much involved because, like the Bears, the Vikings defense is really good at shutting down opposing tight ends. So it could be tough. Definitely could be tough, but it can be done. And I think Jeffrey's going to be a big part of it.
Yeah, I'm going to replace your could be tough with it will be tough because it's going to be tough out there that Monday night. That's for sure. But B, do you have any other insight on that entire Vikings defense that we haven't hit on before we move on?
Nothing that we haven't already hit on. They're very smart, very disciplined. They know the playbook very well. So watch them to try and create more turnovers this week against Jay Cutler and the Bears.
All right, Nick, same to you, but the Bears offense. Any final thoughts?
Hey, let's see a trick play, you guys. We have Zach Miller. He would have been our backup had Jay Cutler not come out, have him throw a pass. Just confuse this Vikings defense.
A trick play on Halloween. I see what you're getting at. I like it. All right, so this leads into my quick hit on special teams, and I am skipping the Bears this week as in talking about them because I feel like every week it's pretty much the same story, new week. But for the Vikings, kicker Blair Walsh is 10 of 13 on the year, but he has hit 7 straight field goals against the Bears and is 15 out of 18 all-time against Chicago, including 2 game winners. And punter Jeff Locke is pinning opponents inside the 20 48% of the time, which is a good for them, bad for the Bears, because pinning opponents deep in their own territory, going up against that Vikings defense is going to make it very, very tough for the Bears to do anything come Monday night on offense. But who knows? We'll see how it all plays out then. All right, guys, let's go around the horn and give our game predictions. It's finally time to do that. I've been waiting for this one because I'm sitting here in the basement. I'm 1-6 on the year. Brandon, you're 2-5, and Nick, you're sitting up top 3-4. You're the lead dog, but you're also the shortest one here, so you're going to go last. I'm going to go ahead and start, and I have this going to be a very low-scoring game. I think it's going to be hard for both offenses to score some points, but I have the Vikings winning 17, Bears 10. B, go ahead. You're up.
I have to agree with you. It'll be a very tight game defensively. I think they'll kind of play like they did against the Packers, where it was very low scoring in the first half. But my final score is going to be 21-10 Vikings win, getting most of their points late in the game like we've seen against Green Bay.
All right, let's go short stuff. What do you got over there, man?
Wow, looks like I'm going to get another win because you both went with the Vikings. I got the Bears winning 17-10. So the exactly opposite of you, Will. But you guys are going to be what, 2 games back now after I win this week? Nice.
I'm already 2 back, so
yeah, true.
we'll see. I mean, the only time I picked against the Bears this year, they won. So you're in good shape over there, man. You really are. All right, and the fan poll results for the same question for the picking the game. 51% of Bears fans believe the Vikings are going to win by 6 or more. So not a lot of hope going on in Chicago in terms of the football team. Not talking about the baseball team. A lot of hope going on over there. But this leads into our last segment of the show, which is going to be our bold predictions. And Nick, since you are last for the game prediction, I'll go ahead and let you go first for the bold prediction.
Bold prediction, I have Jay Cutler not throwing any picks against this defense.
That's pretty bold. All right. B, how about you?
I have the score at 7-7 at halftime.
Okay. Gee, I did not expect that. For me,
I had to go outside the box a little bit, you know.
Yeah, it's bold.
No one's made a score bold prediction yet, so I figured I'd be the first.
All right. That's not bad. It's not bad. And I mean, and that goes with your game prediction as well of, the Vikings scoring more later in the game. So I like how those two coincide. Good thinking.
I thought that one out.
Yeah, you did. you didn't skip ahead and do the bold prediction first. All right. And so my bold prediction this week is also dealing with Jay Cutler and another player that we all know, Alshon Jeffrey. I have them connecting for at least a 50-plus yard touchdown in this game. It's going to be Jeffrey's first touchdown of the season. It's going to be a long one because he's been open down there, guys. We just haven't had the quarterback to find him in stride, and I think Jay is that guy. All right, and lastly, before we head out, Nick, you picked the Bears to win, which means it's your turn to give us your 3 reasons why the Bears will win on Monday night.
I did pick them to win, so these better be good reasons. But they have to play an entire game on defense, not just the first half, which we've seen that they can do. The second half, even if the offense isn't moving the ball, they have to be able to stay in the game and give this offense a chance. They're not going to get very many, but this defense needs to keep them in the game. And Cutler and the offense need to find a way to win the time of possession. The Vikings do not have a good running game right now, and maybe the Bears – they have to be able to convert on third down. So it's going to be huge for them to win time of possession just so they can give their defense a break. And then most importantly, the Bears cannot turn this ball over because with this Vikings defense, it easily could happen. And you don't want to give this Vikings offense short field opportunities. But if the Bears can do those and on defense, just exploit the matchups with the 2 tackles, maybe the Bears, get a win. I think they'll get a win on Halloween night.
Ooh, spooky. All right. So, guys, that's all we really have for you tonight. I want to thank you all for watching live because we actually have a decent amount of live viewers tonight despite the World Series. So that surprises me. So thank you. We do appreciate that. Or if you're listening to the podcast, we appreciate you just as much. Really, we love you all. Thank you. And so for Brandon and Nick, I am Will DeWitt. We are going to talk to you as soon as the game ends on Monday night. It's going to be a real late night with ETA close to midnight, Brandon and I's time. But hey, we don't care. We're here to talk Bears football. We don't want to go to bed after the game, win or lose. We're ready to talk Chicago Bears football, and we can't wait to see you then. Hopefully, we can celebrate a Bears win against the Vikings like Nick predicted. But until then, you know what to do. Bear down, Chicago.